Councilor Baker.
Here.
Councilor Campbell.
Here.
Councilor Siomo. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Councilor Garrison. Councilor Janey. Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Wu. And Councilor Zakum. All present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. At this time, I'm informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I ask all guests and colleagues to please rise. Thank you. As Councilor Baker introduces our clergy for the day, and after the clergy member delivers the invocation, I ask everyone to remain standing as they take us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, everybody. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to a young man from Dorchester, Ariel Morales. He's an engineer who works in a mechanical discipline at Smith Group in Massachusetts and has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering Technology from Wentworth Institute of Technology. He's a member of the Boston Spanish Seventh-day Adventist Church in Dorchester on Stoughton Street in the district. There he uses his talents and time as the church clerk, audio and visual assistant, and photographer as the church's youth department media coordinator. That's a lot of words for me if I'm not getting them right. And wherever else he is needed. So I give you Ariel Morales.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of Boston residents. Lord, I ask that you impart your wisdom, your love, and compassion into each and every single person in this room so that when we discuss, deliberate, and make decisions, that they have a loving and positive impact on the people that it affects. Lord, I ask that you be with each and every one of us, our families, throughout this meeting and throughout the rest of the day. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, we're actually going to have a few presentations today. Normally, we leave it to 2, but we did 3 today just because time was of the essence for some of those presentations, so I just asked everyone to bear with us. And I have the honor and privilege of starting us out with Andrea Baez, who is the Executive Director of the Dorchester Y. So if you could come on down and bring your family, please, and your team members as well, that would be great. Please join me up here. Come on up, come on up, come on up. Yeah, we'll get pictures too. So everyone, I think everyone knows Andrea Baez, who is the Executive Director of the Dorchester YMCA, who is a staple in the community and has been dedicated to not only that community, but to our young people for a really long time. She is moving on to, I guess, greener pastures. And it was an opportunity for us to not only thank her publicly and before the council for her leadership and her work with respect to the community in Dorchester and the greater Boston area. Oh, she's going to make me cry. I can't look at her. But also just to acknowledge her publicly. You know, it's hard work to serve folks in the community, especially our young people. And she not only does that with love, compassion, and empathy, she does it with her whole heart and being. So whether it's a Saturday, a Sunday, Monday through Friday evenings, she is always there. You can always count on her to show up. Her family is here as well as her husband and her 2 beautiful children. We all know that we bring our family into this work as well. So thank you for your service to our community as well. And her incredible team is also here, and I'll let her acknowledge them. But before I do that, I wanted to thank you on behalf of my team. We've worked really closely together, the Dorchester Ys in my district, in District 4. And my team, on behalf of my entire team, we say thank you for your leadership, thank you for your work. We have a special gift here for you. You can open it later. And I also just want to read a little bit of her bio, because I think some folks think she just works with young people and that's all she does. She's been doing this work for a really long time, and I want folks at home to also hear this. So Andrea has been committed as a Y professional for 12 years with Greater Boston. She began her YMCA career in an after-school and day camp at Burbank YMCA, went on to hold leadership positions as a senior program administrator in Dorchester and Roxbury. She was a regional director for the Child Care Resource Department and operations director at Roxbury. She spent the last 5 years dedicated to the Dorchester community and as the branch executive director. Her accomplishments are many. She has grown her board of volunteers, tripled philanthropy dollars, nurtured and grown numerous partnerships, given out thousands of turkeys to families during the holidays, and partnered with HGTV to build a mini golf course right in the neighborhood, and just has done incredible work. And lastly, I'll add, youth development is especially near and dear to her heart. There's a teen center right across the street from the main Y. They are not only welcomed, they are loved. And a lot of these young people show up from, homes that things aren't going great, and they're never turned away. They're always offered food. Apparently young people love food. She always has food. They do incredible work. And her team at the Y also does incredible work. And I know this personally as my son who swims at the YMCA, and I know others as well. And so I just want to thank you again, allow you to say a few words, and just appreciate you and the work that you've done for our community.
Thank you so, I'm not crying. Thank you so much for this unbelievable opportunity, but really, the real work happens with my team. I just get to go out and talk about it. So thank you for this. I will not be gone forever. You guys will still see me. There are certain events. I'm looking at Carla right now. I will be at Beach Day, Carla. I will never miss that event. I will still be at Dorchester Day, and I will still be there to celebrate all the unbelievable things that are happening in that community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I invite all of my colleagues to come up, but I also wanted to acknowledge James Morton, who oversees all of the Ys, who's also here as well. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you to your team at the Dorchester Y. And her mom is here, so I was like, is this mom? So thank you for her, and thank you for your dedication to this community as well. Just wanted to acknowledge that mom is in the building. Come on up. Yes, family, get up front. Let me get up.
Come on, Mom.
Andrea on three. 1, 2. Andrea! No tears.
Hey, good to see you.
And at this time, I'd like to invite up Councilor Asabi George for a special presentation. Selfie.
Thank you, Council President Campbell. Today, I'm incredibly excited to present this resolution for National Safe Place Week with representatives from Safe Place sites in the city of Boston. This year's NSP Week celebrates the 35th anniversary of Safe Place, a national outreach and prevention program to serve youth in need of immediate help and safety. By partnering with local businesses and organizations, Safe Place operates a collaborative program to make support services readily available for youth in crisis. In Boston, Safe Place is operated by Bridge Over Troubled Waters, a Boston-based service provider for homeless, runaway, and at-risk youth. National Safe Place Week gives us a chance to celebrate the tireless efforts of our Boston providers to expand access to treatment and care in our city for the most vulnerable population in our city, our youth. I'm grateful for our service providers and for local businesses for stepping up to promote the safety and well-being of our youth at risk. For children and teenagers in crisis, these outreach and prevention services are critical to their ability to succeed. I'd like to introduce Jane Shaughnessy, the Adolescent Runaway Counselor, who has played a key role in establishing the Safe Place Network in Boston. Jane?
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for helping to recognize this week as National Safe Place Week and for recognizing the importance of the Safe Place Network in our community. Bridge Over Troubled Waters is Boston's foremost agency serving homeless, runaway, and at-risk youth. In 2016, we joined National Safe Place Network as the lead Safe Place agency so that we could create and train a network of Safe Place sites in and around the city of Boston. This network is an extension of our outreach services to homeless and runaway youth. Each Safe Place is an access point to Bridge's program and services for underage youth who urgently need help and safety. I'm so grateful to all the members of our network for the work that they do, helping connect youth in need to our resources. Last year, we came together to connect 135 underage youth to Bridge 24/7, 365 days a year. Thank you so much.
And so on behalf of the Boston City Council, all members of the council have signed these resolutions, which we're going to share with you, recognizing National Safe Place Week. This week, I would like to recognize the 15 safe places in Suffolk County that provide a safe place for our youth. This includes 4 Boston Public Branch libraries, including Teen Central at the Central Library at Copley Square, 4 BPS Welcome Centers, 2 spots through Bridge Over Troubled Waters, the Elliott Family Resource Center, the Haley House Soup Kitchen, Project Trust at Boston Medical Center, Succeed Boston, and because we welcomed and acknowledged Andrea from the Dorchester Y, I also want to make special note that the Wang YMCA in Chinatown is also a safe place. So on behalf of the Boston City Council, the City of Boston, we just want to recognize all of you for your work to make every day happen, not just this one week that we're recognizing it, and certainly thank your partner organizations for the effort that they do. Jane and everybody, thank you very much for being here. And we're going to turn it over to Claire. And probably James and Andrea, if you two want to come up too as partner organization representatives. Andrea, we've already done a picture with you, so you might as well join us again.
We're still there. Yeah, no, it's looking great, too.
You got it. You know it. Sorry, I'm tall. I can't squeeze up.
I know, like, he's going to hold on to it like I've known you for years. Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, thank you. You'll make sure those get to where they need to go.
We will. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Do you have that? Yes. Oh, will you give me that? Thank you again. Thank you.
And now I'd like to invite up Councillor Flynn for a very special presentation of one of our very own.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the opportunity to recognize a dedicated city employee that gave many years of service to our city, working on behalf of our veterans and military families. That's Commissioner Giselle Sterling. I have a proclamation here that's signed by all the city councilors, but before I read it, I want to recognize Commissioner Sterling for her tremendous work, working closely with Mayor Walsh, working with the City Council and various agencies to make sure that our veterans and our military families are treated fairly and are treated with the respect that they've earned. Commissioner Sterling was instrumental in Operation Thank-A-Vet. It's a program where once every 2 months, volunteers go around to certain neighborhoods with a list of veterans and letting them know, first of all, they thank them for their service, but they also provide a list of services that they've earned. It's an excellent program, and Commissioner Sterling was always there for our veterans, whether it was on a Saturday or a Sunday. They were having trouble with the VA. They were having trouble accessing health care. She was instrumental in working closely with women veterans, making sure that their voice was heard here in Boston and at the VA as well. She worked closely with Mayor Walsh on ending chronic homelessness for veterans, and we would always see Commissioner Sterling as part of the census count, always advocating for our veterans during this period of time. So it's an honor for me to present a citation signed by all of my colleagues on the City Council, and I'll read it to you. Commissioner Sterling, in recognition of your years of dedicated service in support of veterans, our military Gold Star families, as Commissioner of Veterans Services for the City of Boston, from your time in the United States Marine Corps to Commissioner of Veterans Services, you have always honorably served your country and been a champion for programs that assist our veterans, our military families, our Gold Star families, while honoring their sacrifices for our city and our country. Your compassionate leadership will be missed, but the City of Boston wishes you nothing but the best in all your future endeavors. Thank you for your service. It's signed by all the City Council members, and we wish you the best of luck, and we do know that you'll continue working hard for veterans and military families. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Thank you so much for this honor, Councilor Flynn and the rest of the City Council. I'm joined here by my colleague and work family, Quincy Roberts, because all of that work and programs that you mentioned couldn't have been done just by me. So if he could, please join me up here. That would be great. He's also a military family. The rest of my work family is working hard, putting together Thank-A-Vet and our Welcome Home breakfast coming up. And I feel like we've spent the last 4 years and then recognizing veterans and military families. And it's been an honor to continue that. So I thank you for that, and just want to say that there are veterans in every single one of your neighborhoods and every single corner of the city of Boston. We are problem solvers, we are leaders, we are innovators, and at the core of everything that we do, we want to serve. So please lean on us, please continue to serve us and our families, and thank you for letting me serve the city of Boston. Thank you.
Definitely going to put you guys, okay?
Thank you, Councillor Flynn, for the very special presentation. Moving on to approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes of the last council meeting are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 0545, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $58,916 in the form of a Recreational Trails Program grant awarded by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Department of Conservation and Recreation, to be administered by the Boston Transportation Department. The grant will fund additional expenses, fees, and professional services beyond what was originally anticipated for a new accessible gateway and path in the Arnold Arboretum from the Bussey Street underpass in Rosendale.
Docket 0545 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Did you read the next two dockets?
Yes, if we could read docket 0546 and 0547 together, that would be great.
Docket number 0546, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $50,000 in the form of a grant from the Professional Development Fund awarded by the Shaw Family Foundation to be administered by the City Council. The grant will fund comprehensive professional development initiative for the Boston City Council with the focus on racial equity. Docket number 0547, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $25,000 in the form of a grant for the Professional Development Fund awarded by the Boston Foundation to be administered by the City Council. The grant will fund a comprehensive professional development initiative for the Boston City Council with a focus on racial equity.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And as many of you know, I sent an email around, and we've also let team members of each councilor know, really push this year as council president to be able to get funds into the city council's budget for professional development opportunities, not just for the council as an institution and us as colleagues, but also for our team members. And through the gracious support of the Shaw Foundation and the Boston Foundation, was able to fund that professional development account in the city council's budget, which I think is the first in the history of the council. So it's something I think for us to celebrate. And I'm choosing to use a portion of the funds for racial equity training, which will start at some point this year and will be robust. And the goal is for us to be equipped in a shared understanding of when we talk about race and racism and inequities, what do we mean by that? But also to create a space where we could talk about these sometimes difficult subjects together as a collective. And why is that important? To address inequities that show up on every issue that all of us work on. We see the reports, we see the data, we see reports from various departments that highlight inequities often along racial lines or neighborhood lines. So in order for us to have a good response and good policy, I think this training is necessary. So look forward to working with each and every one of you, but also our team members and our incredible staff who work with us to pull you into this training, to get you immersed, and then to also think about in the future how we can use professional development dollars for other opportunities, particularly for staff and central staff. I think it's important, I think we all agree, that folks have an opportunity to learn and to grow in their respective positions. So really excited to really excited to join you guys today in voting on these grants. And I ask for suspension of the rules and passage of these two dockets on behalf of the council. So I'm going to take each one separately. For docket 0546, the chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0546. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0546 has been passed. For docket 0547, the chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0547. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0547 has been passed. Moving on to reports of public officers and others.
Docket number 0548, notice was received from Sheila Dillon, Chief of Housing, of the 2018 Annual Report on Boston's affordable housing.
Docket 0548 will be placed on file. Moving on to reports of committees.
Docket number 0139, the Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on January 9th, 2019. Docket number 0139, an ordinance regarding good food purchasing standards in the City of Boston. submits a report recommending the ordinance ought to pass in a new draft.
Counselor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance seeks to help the City of Boston leverage its purchasing and procurement power to support value-driven purchasing, specifically purchases that support local economies, nutrition, a valued workforce, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability. This ordinance is in part modeled after the standards espoused in the Good Food Purchasing Program developed by the Center for Good Food Purchasing back in 2012. The matter was sponsored by our colleague, City Councilor Michelle Wu, referred to the committee back on January the 9th of 2019. The matter is a refiled matter from last year. The committee held a public hearing on the original docket 0413 on December 5th, 2018. The committee additionally held working session on docket 0139 on Monday, February 25th. And as a result of that and feedback received at the working sessions as well as the hearings, a few changes were made to the ordinance. They include the inclusion of health insurance and child care access to the definition of protection of workers' rights, purpose 4-91, amending references to, quote, requests for proposals in, quote, proposals to, quote, procurement request and, quote, responses throughout, as the administration's representative, Ms. Benavidez, explained that BPS may use various procurement methods. Acknowledgement of potential future changes to departmental procurement that could bring a new department into purview of the ordinance under the requirements for departments and agencies, 4-9.2. Clarification of the role of the Office of Neighborhood Services under transparency, 4-9.4. Addition of language that extends the role of Community Advisory Council beyond implementation, as requested by departments and agencies in Common Advisory Council, 4-9.4. Addition of print requirements for reports and records under reporting, 4-9.5. Clarification under reporting, 4-9.5, that department and agency reports shall provide to the City Council annually, regardless of request. Other minor changes to formatting and phrasing. As a result of these changes, as the chair, I recommend that it pass in an amended draft, docket 0139, and turn it over through the chair to the lead sponsor for further comment. She did great work on this, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Flaherty. Counselor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to give a big thanks to Chairman Flaherty for making sure that we shepherded this through multiple iterations and all the tweaks to make sure at the end of the day we have an ordinance that is very tight on the language and also gets at the exact goals that we want. I also wanted to mention individually all the organizations that made up the coalition that really helped push this: Corporate Accountability, United Food and Commercial Workers, the ASPCA and MSPCA, Healthcare Without Harm, Food Chain Workers, Mass Farm to School, and the Boston Public Market. I'll put in a lot of time reviewing all the different drafts and thinking about what pieces could be put in place for the City of Boston to have the most impact right away. And really want to thank Laura Benavidez, the Boston Public Schools Director of the Office of Food and Nutrition Services, who is incredible, her team and the administration for being with us since we introduced this and having the conversations and shaping it so that this is something that her office now will be able to implement, and she's been a champion for this from the beginning. So just a little bit of a reminder of the context. The idea is that as with so many of the items that we're tackling here at the City Council, Boston should be taking every possible step that we can take today. And our food system in the country, and this is down to every level, is one of these systems that is ripe with the most injustices, right? You think about farm workers and how that largely immigrant workforce is treated, intimidation, documented instances of wage theft, an issue that will be brought up later on in this meeting. Similarly, horrible conditions at many of the industrial packaging plants for food, animal welfare, and the abuses that are happening for animals that are livestock, et cetera, who will end up nourishing us and our kids. Corporations who are who have lobbied to weaken federal nutrition standards so that many of the USDA standards of what qualifies for a vegetable that we feed to our kids is extremely flexible because there has been such an involvement by industry and corporation in our food system, generating profits, that the best thing that we could do as a city for our kids, for our families, is to make it as local as possible. And there's a great movement in Boston and Massachusetts around urban agriculture, new farms that are coming online, and the more that we can connect our kids to fresh, locally produced foods. It's healthier for them, many of them getting the majority of their calories during the day from their school meals. And it also helps with our climate goals, because now we're no longer talking about shipping food across the country or even from outside the country, but we're just taking it down the street, as some of the farmers who have testified here have said. Boston would be the first city in the Northeast to take the lead on this. There are many other cities further west and south that have done this, but it is a challenge in our climate, and so I think this ordinance represents a very reasonable way to make sure that even without 365-day-a-year access to farmed goods, that we can make a difference locally. And we have huge potential. Boston Public Schools spends $18 million a year on food, and that is incredible purchasing power that could go to support local farmers, better practices, healthier foods, as well as the opportunity to put a stake in the ground so that we are leading not just our own practices, but those of hospitals and universities in the city who are also spending tremendous amounts of money feeding their youth, students, patients, families, et cetera. And we've had some of those conversations already. So I just want to close with an example of something that is happening now, or that has happened recently with the Boston Public Schools food contract, that this will provide a new path forward. So our food contract now, thanks to the advocacy of many folks in this room, does have provisions to provide for local jobs, local production, et cetera. But because we are not yet tracing all those ingredients all the way through, there are some, I think, unintended consequences that are happening. So for example, fish sticks that end up in our school lunches. The provision in the contract requires as much local as possible. So the fish comes from Gloucester, where the company there sort of chops it up and puts it in the fish stick shape and freezes it. It then gets shipped to a local Boston nonprofit over at Commonwealth Kitchen, where they defrost it, cook it so that it's fully cooked, refreeze it. They then have to ship it over to the company's, one of their main headquarters, this national company's main places in the Northeast in Connecticut, where it might get defrosted again, it may not, but where it gets assembled into the little trays there and sealed in plastic, and then shipped back to Boston for the schools to microwave it, peel it open, et cetera. So well-intentioned, but even with our current contract and all the work that went into it, when we're not tracing things step by step, when we don't have that baseline analysis, there's just huge gains that are lost there. Unnecessary travel, unnecessary costs added to the school budget. So we have the ingredients locally, we have the energy, we have so many people ready and willing to help. This ordinance will make sure that we have the process and the mandate for Laura Benavidez in her office to make sure that we get it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who's chair of the Committee on Government Operations, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0139 in a new draft. All those in favor of passage, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0139 has been passed in a new draft. Madam, Mr. Clerk, if we could read docket 0212 and 0213 together.
Docket number 0212, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on January 30th, 2019. Docket number 0212. Message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $1,388,154 for the Boston Public Schools to cover the impact of the collective bargaining agreement between BPS's transportation vendor, Transdev, and its bus drivers union. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0213, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on January 30th, 2019. Docket number 0213. Message in order to reduce the fiscal year 19 appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $1,388,154 to provide funding for the Boston Public Schools to cover the impact of the collective bargaining agreement between Boston Public Schools transportation vendor Transdev and its bus drivers union. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass.
Thank you. Councilor Seelma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0213 transfers the funds from the collective bargaining reserve and docket 0212 authorizes the funding of the agreement. There are approximately 870 bus drivers in the bargaining unit who are employed by Transdev. The 3-year agreement will extend to June 2021 with an estimated cost of $6.8 million. Language items included in this contract are changes to increase Transdev's ability to address employee leave abuse, a requirement that all drivers complete fingerprinting, an increase to the number of drivers eligible to retire with severance pay, and a cap on partial route driving employees eligible for full-time benefits. Compensation and other cost items include 2% wage increase effective in July of each year of the contract, a 2% annual increase to charter bus rates in years 2 and 3 after a specific increase in year 1, increased 401k match contributions, and changes to severance provisions. The committee held its public hearing on these dockets on March 14th. Boston Public School Chief of Operations John Hanlon, Assistant Director of the Transportation Finance Ed Pesch testified on behalf of the administration. The supplemental appropriation that we are authorizing today for this agreement is $1,388,154. Following approval of this appropriation, there will be $15,964,679 remaining in the collective bargaining reserve. As Chairman of Ways and Means, I recommend passage of these dockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. There we go. Good. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? Okay, at this time, Councilor Siomo, who's chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, recommends acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0212 and 0213. I will take each one separately. For dockets 0212, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Docket 0212 has been passed. For docket 0213, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0213 has been passed. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0250, an ordinance protecting local wetlands and promoting climate change adaptation in the city of Boston.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0250, it's a proposed ordinance that seeks to be a tool to protect wetlands, water resources, flood-prone areas, and adjoining areas in the city of Boston from net loss of their function, value, and acreage by controlling activities and mitigating effects deemed by the Boston Conservation Commission to have an adverse impact on the resource areas. This matter was sponsored by both of our colleagues, City Councilor at Large Michelle Wu, and District 6 City Councilor Matt O'Malley. We held a public hearing on Monday, March 18, 2019. We heard several folks testify. We had administration folks. We had folks from advocacy groups, Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission. We had Director of Projects for the Charles River Watershed. We had attorneys. We had the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. We had senior environmental planners. We had folks and representatives on behalf of NIOP. So we heard testimony in supporting of Boston creating their own wetlands ordinance that is tailored to best fit the needs of this unique urban environment while underscoring the importance of greater collaboration with all of the stakeholders. So based on that feedback, the testimony as chair, I'm recommending that it remain in committee, but through the chair will defer to the two lead sponsors who, again, on behalf of this council, have done great work in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. They look like they're okay. So docket 0250 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0248, order for a hearing to discuss the need for more civics education in our Boston Public Schools beyond the current minimal half-year requirement.
Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This Monday, I chaired a hearing regarding civics education in the Boston Public Schools, sponsored by Councilor Garrison. We were joined by representatives from the Boston Public Schools, including Natasha Scott, Director of History and Social Studies, and Charles Granson, Chief Academic Officer for the Boston Public Schools. We were also joined by Dr. Reif, who is the Director of Civic Learning and Engagement at the Massachusetts Department of Higher Ed. The hearing began with a presentation from BPS that emphasized opportunities for current students in BPS, that current opportunities they are giving through the civics curriculum, curriculum and engagement opportunities, such as Discovering Justice curriculum, Civics Engagement Day on the Hill, which I've asked them, hopefully they'll partner with us to replicate something similar here, perhaps a engagement day at the hall. The Student Poll Worker Program, which we've learned a lot about in the last few years, and an Action Civics Project. BPS continues to plan future implementation of opportunities, especially since the passing of the civics legislation at the State House, which is also known as an Act to Promote and Enhance Civic Engagement. This has been signed into law by Governor Baker this past November. The Boston Civics Collaborative, as well as, which includes stakeholders such as BSAC, the Boston Student Advisory Council, Generation Citizen, Society, I can't even get it out of my mouth. Youth on Board and more. They meet bi-monthly to discuss curriculum and instruction. Dr. Reif also spoke about colleges and university campuses and their need to embrace students to be civically engaged. We also heard testimony from the Boston Debate League, iCivic, and others, all agreeing that it's crucial to teach our youth about history, but also to engage them in current day activities, and that's also known as civics. I ask that this remain in committee, but I also defer to further comment by my colleague, Councillor Garrison.
Thank you, Councillor Asabi-George. Councillor Garrison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the hearing I sponsored on civics education in the city of Boston, which was held Monday afternoon, we were happy to welcome our panelists, several subject matters experts on this topic, include Natasha Scott from the Boston Public School, Dr. John Reif from the Massachusetts Department of Education, and Charles Granson from the Boston Public School. At the hearing, I voiced my strong support of the need for more curriculum and instruction on civics education in our Boston Public Schools. I was happy with the turnout of interested residents who came out for the hearing, including many young people, and a robust discussion followed among those present. Thank you for the other councilors who joined us for the hearing, to Councilor Asabi-George, who chaired the hearing. I look forward to continuing this discussion and the record and the need for more civics education in our Boston public school system. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Garrison. At this time, docket 0248 will remain in the Committee on Education.
Docket number 0315, ordinance establishing equitable regulation of the cannabis industry in the city of Boston.
Councillor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance seeks to create a Boston Cannabis Board and a Boston Equity Program, and in doing so, the proposal looks to establish the qualifying criteria for equity applicants. The ordinance additionally outlines application requirements for all cannabis establishment applicants, the criteria for licensing, fees, and enforcement powers, among other things. This matter was sponsored by our colleague, City Councilor Kim Janey. The committee held close to a 4-hour public hearing yesterday, Tuesday, March the 19th. Based on all the feedback plus recommendations for suggested changes to the ordinance, the Committee on Government Operations is recommending that 0315 remain in committee, but through the chair would defer if the lead sponsor has anything additional to add. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President, and thank you to the chairman of GovOps. We had another hearing that was well attended. The chambers were packed here, lots of advocates, lots of entrepreneurs in the House. As a reminder, this is a follow-up. I initially held a hearing when it was in my committee in Small Business and Consumer Affairs back in December. We did a working session, a listening session with entrepreneurs back in January, introduced the legislation in February, heard from many folks, many of my colleagues were there at the hearing. Lots of good ideas and recommendations. Look forward to continuing this work with all of you, with all of the advocates, and with the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janey. Docket 0315 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0187, Home Rule Petition for a Special Law regarding an act authorizing the City of Boston to establish an investor and commercial properties transfer fee.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This matter was sponsored by our colleague, City Councilor Lydia Edwards and City Councilor Kim Janey. We held a hearing yesterday, again, close to a 4-hour hearing. It's a home rule petition that calls for a fee up to 6% of the purchase price of real estate transfer, with 3% being paid by the seller and 3% being paid by the purchaser, with a maximum of 25% fee for properties that are sold repeatedly in a time span of 2 years. The home rule petition would include multiple exemptions for the fee. For example, when a property is transferred between family members, when the value is less than $2 million, and when the property is transferred to the government, whether the U.S., the Commonwealth, or its subdivisions. Should this home rule pass and go into effect, the fees would go towards the Neighborhood Housing Trust for affordable housing. We had a very spirited and hearing yesterday with a diversity of opinions. We look forward to holding a working session with stakeholders at the very near future. And at this time, would like to have the matter remain in committee. That's docket 0187. What would be, through the chair, would defer it to the lead sponsors if they have any additional comments. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I agree, again, with your assessment. It was a very spirited conversation, but I think that we really was reflecting the amount of people who are very passionate about assuring we have the resources to prevent displacement in Boston. I think what was left hanging and what we're still need to discuss is, again, what's it going to take and what's the price tag to assure that Boston is an affordable city for working class, for middle class, for poor folks, to assure that we are a city for all. And that's a price tag that we need to get from the city, because we know with the money that the city is bringing in with linkage, we do not have the resources right now to assure that we can build a middle class city or that we can continue to build that. That is a fact. That's what we heard. This, as reported in the Globe, could bring in over $400 million to assure that we have the coffers filled to subsidize for the affordability that we need. That includes homeowner assistance. That includes making sure that we are buying down affordability in already existing buildings. That includes making sure that we are actually investing and purchasing buildings at market rate in our already successful acquisition opportunity program. These are programs the city has right now. We do not have enough resources for even the plans and the programs the city is promoting for affordable housing. So this is one of those tools in the toolbox. And I want to thank all the colleagues who came out to specifically add in their opinions. I want to thank Councilor Baker, Siomo, Malley, Campbell, Sabi George, Flynn. I want to also thank Councilor Flaherty as the chair of that committee. That was a doubleheader for you yesterday, almost, I think, was it 8 hours of sitting in there? I am not forgetting, of course, about the co-sponsor of the legislation, who was then the sponsor of the previous one. I want to thank you all so much. I think I may have forgotten Councilor Wu as well, who's also there. This is, I think, an important conversation to have, and I look forward to continuing this conversation and having a working session and passing this in the City Council. I believe we can get this done. I want to thank Councilor O'Malley for specifically pointing out the flexibility in the language and that it was intentional. Up to 6% means something. And we will add up to 3% and up to 3% to assure that we are talking about a true flexible model and a balance that can be struck. It is also up to 25% for the flipping tax as well. We're talking about setting the right kind of balance. And as I stated in the hearing, and I'll say again, for those who are interested in making sure we strike that balance, those who are representative of the industry in real estate, those who are not, if we're interested in a balance, they're welcome to the table. But if there's an outright opposition to any form or any way of getting more resources, then yeah, I don't understand or see the point in negotiating with folks who are absolutely going to oppose this. But I look forward to hearing from folks and learning from them and making sure, again, that our city, who stood there and said we do not have the resources for our own 2030 plan. We do not have enough resources for our own plan in Boston. That's a problem. I also want to be clear that while we did have city departments, the assessing department, we need to hear from the BPDA and we need to hear from the Neighborhood Housing Trust. There was a question about process, and the fact of the matter is the assessing department does not handle fees right now. So I appreciate their opinion about the process, but they don't deal with that right now, and I think we need those who deal with fees to actually have an opinion on this. I also appreciate the assessing department's assessment or opinions about the market rates and how this would impact. Again, I prefer the developing department to actually talk about marketing, to talk about impact on development versus our assessing department, which is dealing with taxes only. So I look forward to a spirited debate, but I look forward to this passing, and I know we can do this as a body. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Madam President, and big thanks to my co-sponsor, Councilor Edwards, and to the chair of the committee. Very long day for many of us yesterday. Two very important hearings that lasted close to 4 hours. You know, I'm very impressed by the advocates who continue to fight and to push us, not only for their activism and their advocacy, but for offering real solutions. And I would encourage others who are finding fault and criticizing to do the same, to find some solutions to this issue. I also find it deeply concerning that we don't have real numbers in terms of what the cost would be, what the need is, like making sure that we understand how much money do we need to address our housing crisis in Boston, and how many units do we need to be affordable moving forward. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you, with all of the advocates and the administration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Docket 0187 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0549, Councilor Zakhem and Wu offered the following: an ordinance amending Chapter 9 of the City of Boston Code, ordinances regarding landlords providing voter registration to tenants.
Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank our good colleague, Councilor Wu, for her partnership on this. This is a fairly simple ordinance. It's based on what's happened in some other cities across the country, notably in Seattle, Washington, St. Paul, Minnesota. That simply requires landlords, when they are signing new leases, to include amongst the package of materials that they provide to their tenants voter registration forms and information so that they can register. As we all know, particularly Councilor Siomo in his district, on September 1st, which is often within a week of a primary, certainly within a few weeks of a primary, there is a huge turnover in apartments across the city of Boston. It's a great opportunity to help folks update their information, register in a timely fashion. Very minimal burdens on landlords. They are already providing various information around city services, around codes, around deletting, and other sorts of things that are required by city ordinance and state law. This would be added to the package. I think it's a simple approach that's really worked in other communities. Look forward to holding a hearing, to working with the Elections Department, D&D, others who will be involved, and the real estate community to figure out a way to do this. I can say a lot of the landlords in some of the communities I represent, particularly in Mission Hill, do this already on their own. They find it to be simple. They often will come here August and pick up a stack of voter registration forms from the Elections Department and put them out there. And I just think it's another tool in the toolbox to continue increasing access to our elections and civic engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to thank my colleague for his continued leadership on trying to remove barriers to voter access and boost civic engagement and build a truly inclusive city. Boston has such a strong civic infrastructure. We have so many resources available to support residents and neighborhood groups and ways to get involved. But oftentimes when I talk to people who weren't originally from here, there's this gap of when someone kind of decided they needed to do it and they had to put in the active effort to find that association, figure out a way, plug in. And then once you kind of meet someone who will take you under their wing and show you around, then all of a sudden in Boston you're welcome and you're in and you're able to access all of that. But this would be just one easy step to get people there even faster and encourage them to get involved, kind of look up what's happening around them, who's on the ballot, what issues are on the ballot, and then plug into all of the other civic resources available too. So looking forward to the process and the hearing and hopefully implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Mr. Clerk, if you could add Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Janey, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley. I think I got you, Councilor Janey. Did I get Councilor Janey?
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Janey, as well as the chair. Docket 0549 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0550, Councilor Edwards offered the following: order for a hearing regarding wage theft at Logan Airport and in the City of Boston.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I come here today to, again, talk about how the City of Boston has already a mission and already at the very core of our very being to assure that workers and people who live here are paid a living wage. That's what we do in Boston. We fight for workers, we fight for working families. And we fight regardless of who that employer is, how big, how corporate, or whether that employer is another agency. The fact of the matter is Massport is one of our largest employers and one of the largest entities in Boston. And they have a role to play when some of their subcontractors or individuals that choose to do business with them do not pay their workers. They are not unaware of this fact. ReadyJet and FSS have routinely been documented for stealing workers' wages, for sexual harassment, for union intimidation, and assuring that the workers do not feel dignified or safe when they come to work for JetBlue and specifically at Massport. Massport has a role to play and thus far has pulled back in that role. And we've seen that already when we're talking about even our own safety, when we're trying to even get our police officers to coordinate in an appropriate way. Massport is not just a neighbor here. Massport complies with city ordinances when it sees fit. I can look at the development in East Boston and seeing the relationship with Massport and complying with our zoning code and looking at the IDP and providing for affordable units or assuring that those who develop there did. Massport has a role to play to promote equity, fairness, and good jobs. And so this hearing is about bringing them to the table. It's about bringing the workers to the table, ReadyJet, FSS, to basically say we need to stop wage theft, especially here in the city of Boston. We had committed in 1997 to the Boston Jobs and Living Wage Ordinance. We did that to assure that families of a family of four would be able to work and make wages at or above the poverty level. We have set that baseline. Again, we reset that baseline on wage theft ordinance that Mayor Walsh passed in his first year here as a mayor to assure that that either any worker that has not been paid, if we have a license or if they have a relationship with the City of Boston, we can hold that entity accountable, or we would facilitate a way for that worker to get to the Attorney General's office and file claims. The fact of the matter is we are here for workers. We've set up a structure for workers, and yet here we have workers who live and work in Boston, who work at Massport, and they have said many times we're not being paid, we're being hurt, and we're being harassed. So I'm asking all of my colleagues to come to this hearing. I'm asking Massport to come to this hearing, and we're going to talk about how we're going to stop wage theft at Logan Airport. We're going to talk about that because, as my colleagues in 32BJ say, poverty doesn't fly. And we don't want that to happen or take off from Boston. We have a role to play Boston. We need to hold Massport accountable, who in turn needs to hold JetBlue, who in turn needs to hold FSS and ReadyJet accountable. There's a big table. There's plenty of time. We need to do right by these workers. And I'm asking all of you to come to that hearing. I'm asking you to co-sponsor, and I'm asking all of us to figure out a way to make sure that these workers will go to work and get paid for every single hour that they are away from their families.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to commend Councilor Edwards for her work on this issue. She's been a fighter on this issue, not just on the City Council, but for many years as an attorney. Madam President, I also want to speak about wage theft because I know it's an important issue impacting so many workers across our city, especially low-wage workers, immigrants, people that really don't have access to public counsel, and they're often exploited by their bosses because they know about their immigration status. They know that they may not have legal representation. So it's an exploitation of our workers as well. Recently, there was a case in my district, actually two of them, and I worked closely with the Chinese Progressive Association on one of them. And it was a similar case where immigrants were working in a restaurant, not being paid their fair wage. And I, along with several of our colleagues here on the City Council, wrote a letter on behalf of these workers demanding that they be treated fairly and that they be treated with respect. As Councilor Edwards mentioned, Mayor Walsh signed an executive order in 2014 to prevent wage theft, which allows the Boston Licensing Board to modify, suspend, or revoke a current or potential license if there is a violation of fair labor laws. I also know that Attorney General Maura Healey also has a division that specifically works on this issue fighting for our workers, making sure that they, for every dollar they work, that they receive that pay. So it's an important issue for our city, and it's important that we stand with our workers, because if our workers are not being paid a decent wage, a fair wage, it impacts the entire economy of Boston, but it's certainly not a good record for our city if we know about cases that the poor and the immigrants are not receiving a fair wage, and this is about respect and dignity for all wages. So I'm proud of the work Councilor Edwards has done, and I'd like to add my name, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flynn, as well as Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0550 will be assigned to the Committee on Jobs, Wages, and Workforce Development.
Docket number 0551, Councilor Edwards offered the following. Order for a hearing regarding implementation of Chapter 6 to 8 of the Municipal Code.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Recently, we had a hearing about the divestment of many of our retirement funds, and a result, or on the same day, coincidentally, the administration announced that they are moving $250 million into community banking. That's a wonderful thing. That's something we absolutely support. And we will continue to talk about the $6 billion in our retirement and ensuring that it's in line with our actual goals as a city council. But speaking specifically about that $250 million, during the hearing, we did ask the administration how they intended to comply with the municipal depositories and banking ordinance that had been passed. In 2013, actually, this committee, or this body, under the leadership of then Councilor Felix Arroyo, passed this ordinance assuring community banking and fairness and preventing discrimination. The Invest in Boston ordinance was to regulate city banking practices and establish a public commission to oversee city investments. So we now have $250 million. So the question was, how are you going to assure that money complies with this act? And we got back crickets, because apparently we have not either implemented nor set up the commission for in compliance with the ordinance that we actually passed in 2013. The ordinance specifically supports the city goals of ending racial discrimination and building home ownership through fair lending practices. Specifically, the ordinance sets criteria for institutions which are city banks. $250 million, we're about to move to community banks. So as we said at the City of Boston, if we give you our public funds, you should be held to a certain standard, and that standard should include regular disclosure of banking practices and should assure that we prevent predatory and discriminatory practices. The ordinance creates a commission to oversee the implementation of the financial practices and information reporting within. So during, I don't know what happened between 2013 and now, we have not set up the commission. We need to appoint those members. We need to make sure that, especially with $250 million going into community banks, that we are ready to help monitor that and assure that those banks are in compliance with our ordinance. So this hearing is really about meeting with the city, with the CFO, and saying, how do we make this ordinance come to fruition? It's also a thank you and to Councilor Arroyo for his leadership and making sure that this has happened. And I don't know, was it point 1 or point 2? No, actually, I think, were you? Councilor Flaherty was also there, and I apologize to those who, Councilor Siomo, also there, who helped to pass this. So thank you so much, but let's make sure this comes to fruition.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Mr. Clerk, if you could add Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakem. This is, let's see, docket 0551 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0552, Councilor Edwards offered the following. Order for a hearing regarding preservation of historic Boston.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
I'll be brief. This is simply a refile
Thank
from
you.
last year. And so this is about historic preservation and development, making sure we can have both.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Mr. Clerk, if you could add Counselor Asabi George, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Garrison, Counselor Janey, Counselor McCarthy, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair, Counselor Baker, Counselor Siomo. Counselor Baker, Counselor Siomo. I'd rather not come back for reconsideration. Do you want to add your name to this docket? Docket 0, yeah, I thought so. Docket 0552. Mr. Clerk, if you could also add, this is a historic preservation docket. If you could also add Counselor Baker and Counselor Siomo. Docket 0552 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Docket number 0553, Councilor Asabi George offered the following: resolution recognizing National Safe Space Week.
Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, this is the resolution that I presented earlier today regarding Safe Place Week. I do move for substitution. The one in the packet had a typo. The one that everyone received at the start of the meeting is the accurate one for the file. Thank you.
Any objections? Mr. Clerk, if we could reflect the change. Thank you, Councilor Asabi George, who seeks suspension of the rules and passage of this. But before we do that, Councilor Flaherty? Mr. Clerk, if we could add Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Baker, Counselor Siomo, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Garrison, Counselor Janey, Counselor McCarthy, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair. At this time, Counselor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket, or adoption of docket 0553. All those in favor of adoption, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0553 has been passed. Moving on to personnel orders.
Docket number 0554, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Wu.
Councilor Wu seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0554. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0554 has been passed.
Docket number 0555, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Wu.
Councilor Wu seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0555. All those in favor of passage say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0555 has been passed. Moving on to late files. I'm informed by the clerk that there is one late file, which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. And by the way, it's a personnel order, so that's why you don't have it. Hearing and seeing no objection, the late file matter is so added. Mr. Clerk, if you could read the late file personnel order into the record.
Personnel order, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Zachem.
Councilor Zachem seeks suspension of the rules and passage of the first late file matter, or the first and only late file matter. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The late file matter has been passed. Moving on to the green sheets. Anyone looking to remove a matter at the green sheets? Of the green sheets? Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise at this time to pull docket 0138. It's an ordinance regarding the right to free petition. Matter can be found on page 3 of 16 in the green sheets. Was
Thank
sponsored
you.
by our colleague, Councilor Michelle Wu, and assigned to the committee back on January 9th. The committee had held 2 hearings along with a working session. 2 hearings, one in 2017, one in 2018.
Just for clarification, Councilor Flaherty, so this is page 3 of 16.
That's
This
correct.
is docket 0138.
0138, correct.
In the green sheet, so.
Yep, in the Committee on Government Operations.
And let's have the clerk read it into the record.
From the Committee on Government Operations, the green sheets, docket number 0138, an ordinance regarding the right of free petition.
So as mentioned, this was
Thank you, Mr.
filed
Clerk.
by our colleague, City Council Michelle Wu. The committee held 2 hearings, one in 2017, one in 2018, along with a working session in 2018. Through the chair, I'd like to call for a vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And before we actually move over to Councilor Wu, just quickly want to poll the committee to make sure it's properly before the council. So the clerk will do that now. Just give us a moment.
Committee on Government Operations, Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor Siomo.
Yes.
And Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Docket 0138 is properly before the council. Counselor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you again to the committee chair and to colleagues. We had been planning to put this before the council for a while, but between jury duty and other issues, got pushed back to today. I would say in my final pitch that I think if there were one resource that I would ask for more of to support what we're doing here, it actually wouldn't be funding and dollars, although we could certainly use those anytime to fund city services. But it's civic engagement. I think that is the most important part of our job, is to make sure that we are building trust with communities, giving people a way to plug in, and through that civic partnership, we can figure out all the other issues, from funding to programs to implementation to ideas. And so this ordinance is about that very fundamental right of an individual to appear before their government and get a response. It is baked into the Massachusetts Constitution, dating back from our earliest colonial civic pride. And a dozen other cities in Massachusetts already have this provision in place. So it's not an idea that we're making up out of nowhere. It's not, radical and new. It's actually very old, and one that we would be following a dozen other of our counterparts in implementing. It would mean that an individual who wants to gather signatures from their fellow residents to talk about an issue, to ask to petition their government about an issue that matters to them, would be guaranteed a hearing within a certain period of time. And we've worked through multiple rounds and revisions and public conversations over 2+ years to settle on the parameters proposed today, that it would be 500 signatures for a hearing within a certain period of time that allows for the elections department to not have to be certifying if there is an active election, whether that's a special election or an on-cycle city election, et cetera. What I think I would want to summarize as what would happen if this passes is maybe different from what I think some folks might worry would happen, which is that we would have, ideally the city council would create a new committee to address free petition. It would be chaired by a councilor who would volunteer to do that. And these petitions would be bundled as they come in to be addressed regularly, either the first Friday of the month or on some basis where that is a day where citizen petitions or resident petitions can be heard before the council. This gives people direct access to the council agenda and creates that tighter bond and trust with our residents. The elections department and my office have surveyed the dozen other cities who have this extensively. We've talked to each one of those city clerks and sometimes the elected officials as well to understand how it works there. Certainly Boston is bigger, certainly Boston is unique, but the feedback from the other cities was, one, that they never had more than 1 or even 2 a year, that it wasn't a crushing load of petitions that affected other business, but 2, that it was really, they felt that it was a really important and worthy goal, and that they believed it helped cement their relationships with residents, feeling like they could approach their government for issues that mattered to them. So I am at the point now where I feel like we've had enough hearings and working sessions and debates, and I owe it to the community who first brought this idea to me to seek a vote before the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to briefly say I'm actually kind of apathetic on this here. It doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. What I'm happy about is that we're going to assign an actual committee that someone is going to be volunteer for. Michelle is going to volunteer for that one there, because I think this, as a district city councilor, kind of weakens what we do. We should have the relationships in our neighborhoods where people come and sit and talk with us, which we're going through an issue right now. Someone is saying that they were talking to us, never talked to any of us, looking for a petition. If they wanted a petition, I think if they sat in front of any one of us here, somebody would have given them a hearing that they're looking for. So I personally think that this weakens the position of the district city councilor, so I will be voting no on this one here. And again, the way it plays out, I'm actually kind of apathetic on it. I'm taking my vote based more on a district city councilor and what our role is supposed to be. I think this cheapens us and weakens us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And as a fellow district city councilor, I also share some of your concerns about the fact that people could overstep or simply get in front of and get in line to simply push an agenda that we either as a city have decided it is not in line with our values, or they simply want to waste time, which apparently some people do have a lot of. We don't. We are working extremely hard at assuring that people have a voice. And I think every single one of us does face that certain kind of pressure to bring forth a certain amount of conversations that we can start and actually do something with on our own time. That being said, you know, this city was born as an experiment in democracy. The fact that we lead and that we're going to push and that we're going to take risks with democracy that actually opens up the tent and says people are welcome here to push conversations, I think that's at the very core and fundamental to who we are as Boston. So I understand the risks that this could take. I firmly understand that. And I understand that as a district city councilor and as a councilor recently attacked personally and who was asked to step down from a resignation for not having a conversation. I understand, and I'll be quoted, I'm sure, it's Lydia with a Y, the crazies will be let in, okay? And I hope Councilor Wu understands that too when she's chairing that committee every other Friday or however long it comes up to assure that those voices are in. I don't know that there are enough safeguards to make sure that this is not something that's going to overtax our clerk. I think that's a personal concern. So I will vote in favor of the experiment of democracy. I will vote for this, Councilor Wu. But I do think that there still needs to be some additional conversation in making sure that this is actually done in a correct way in its implementation.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? I'll just quickly add, I think I share some of the concerns related to the district councilors as well, and the concerns related to the burden it will place on our clerk's office. I also think there's a way in which to do this without an ordinance. So for those reasons, I will be voting no. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? Mr. Clerk? If we could just read the docket again into the...
Again, this is from the green sheets from the Committee on Government Operations, docket number 0138, an ordinance regarding the right of free petition.
Thank you. At this time, Councilor Wu seeks passage of docket 0138. All those in favor of passage, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Docket 0138 has not been passed. Yes. At this time, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. I'm informed by the clerk that there are zero late file matters, which is a great thing. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. Any announcements? Councilor Sabi George. Oh. Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I know that everyone knows that I wasn't here last week. I was in Tunisia on a trip through the efforts of the Arab American Institute in partnership with the Middle East Partnership Initiative through the State Department. And it just so happens that today is Tunisia's Day of Independence. So I thought it would be appropriate to say so. In 1956, Tunisia gained its independence from France. And my grandfather happened to play a role in that independence, so I'm very excited to be able to just have a moment to acknowledge that. I will, in the next couple of weeks, as I sort of collect all of the documents and photographs, share a little bit of that experience with all of you, as Tunisia just recently went through some decentralization efforts, renewed its constitution, and has worked to change its style of government. That was part of why we were there, to connect with 10 American Arabs. They are partnered with newly elected municipal officials from all over Tunisia. So I look forward to sharing that with you, but just wanted to note that today is Tunisia's celebration of independence. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to relay some sad news about a friend of mine and Michael Flaherty, Council Flaherty. I'm speaking also for Council Flaherty, but our dear friend, John Mullen, who is a World War II veteran, and I'm also speaking for Councilor Baker as well. But our dear friend, John Mullen, a World War II veteran, United States Marine, passed away on March 17th. And he was active in various veterans organizations in South Boston and Dorchester. And he was a wonderful man. And the day he passed on, he was the founder, along with Joe Murphy, of the World War II Memorial in South Boston. But the day he passed on was the day that our World War II Memorial in South Boston was vandalized. And we also had recent vandalism of the Boston Police Memorial at Mount Hope Cemetery in Mattapan. So I'm just rising to talk about the life of John Mullen and Joe Murphy and their incredible contribution to our city and to our country. John Mullen was a Marine. He was a World War II veteran, a veterans advocate. He was a neighbor, a community activist. He was a father, a grandfather, someone we respected and we admired for his fierce advocacy of the city and our country. He also fought for safeguards, and he lived down Andrews Square. He fought for a better environment. He fought against air pollution. He was an environmentalist before we even knew the term environmentalist. And, you know, just on behalf of myself and Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Baker, we want to express our sympathy to John Mullen and his family and to our veterans in South Boston. And we have great respect and admiration for them. And we'll miss John and we'll miss his advocacy of the town of South Boston, but more importantly, his incredible service for our country as the United States Marine. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any other announcements? At this time, I would like all guests and colleagues to please rise as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For the chair, Bishop Bragg of New Life Restoration Temple. For Councillor O'Malley, his aunt, Claire Sloan. For Councillor Flaherty, Honorable Desi Larkin. For Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Baker, as well as the chair, John Mullen, who was a World War II veteran from Southie. For Councillor Baker, Deirdre D. Irene Kennedy. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber on Wednesday, March 27th at noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.